Change is everywhere, from the development of positive train control, to changes in passenger seating, even to possible mergers. Today, we'll be discussing the second part of the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern merger and the implications of what have occurred in the last few days. Okay, so as you can see, the regulators have rejected the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern merger application because filing was incomplete. Hard-charging Union Pacific CEO Jim Vena has had the railroad's proposed acquisition of Norfolk Southern in Notch 8 since the $85 billion deal was announced in July 2025. For months, he has touted the transcontinental merger as a regulatory slam dunk, arguing that it would be good for shippers, the economy, and rail labor, as well as competition between railroads and trucks. And he pushed to have the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern merger application filed with the STB as soon as possible and reviewed on a tight schedule. But the STB put up a red signal on January 16th when it rejected as incomplete the 6,692-page merger application. That's a lot. That Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern submitted on December 19th. The rejection does not stop the merger, and regulators pointed out that their decision should not be read as an indication of how the board might ultimately assess any future revised application. The decision does, however, put the brakes on the deal for now. Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern have until June 22nd to submit a revised application that addresses 3 shortcomings the STB identified. Union Pacific said it would provide the STB with the information it has requested. The board's 15-page decision said the application did not provide the required projections for post-merger market share, failed to include the complete merger agreement, and did not appropriately address control of Switching Line Terminal Railroad Association of St. Louis. The board found a disconnect between the application's growth projections and its use of 2023 data to define the market share that would be controlled by the merged railroad. The board also agreed with the contention made by other railroads that the application was incomplete because it did not include the entire merger agreement between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern. Specifically, they said it omitted a section on the terms that would allow Union Pacific to walk away from the transaction. The Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern application also treated the disposition of the TRRA as a minor transaction, but the board ruled it as a significant transaction that requires more extensive review. Of course. The TRRA is jointly owned by Union Pacific, Norfolk Southern, BNSF Railway, Canadian National, and CSX. Merger would give Union Pacific a controlling interest in the railroad, although the merger application says Union Pacific plans to divest the Norfolk Southern share that would give it control. BNSF Railway, CN, CPKC, and CSX, in individual statements, applauded the board's decision. The board noted that opponents had argued that the application was incomplete in other ways. The STB said it would not reject the application on those grounds. Instead, the decision reiterated that should the applicants choose to file a revised application, nothing prevents applicants from making additional changes to improve their application now that they have received comments from other stakeholders. I don't think this changes anything for the main event, Hatch says. That is independent analyst Anthony B. Hatch, referring to the year-long review and decision on the merits of the combination itself. The rejection, however, will delay review while piercing the veil of invincibility that had built up around the merger. This is not the first time the STB has told railroads to go back and do their homework. 2021, CSX's bid to acquire New England Regional Pan Am Railways was initially rejected on the grounds that it did not provide enough market analysis. The STB ultimately accepted the revised application and went on to approve the transaction. But a Union Pacific-Norfolk Southern combination and its potentially far-reaching impact on the North American rail network is any different league than CSX acquiring a rickety regional railroad. The STB added a wrinkle to the merger debate when it proposed repealing regulations that have prevented sole-serve carload and bulk shippers from seeking access to a second railroad. It was in the works long before the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern merger was on the radar, but still many shape how railroads and shippers react to the combination. The current regulations that the STB wants to repeal require shippers to prove that a railroad has engaged in anti-competitive conduct. No shipper has ever won access to a second railroad under these rules. An interesting question now. An industry lawyer says it's the whole concept of enhanced competition. Enhanced compared to what? If reciprocal switching becomes the norm, then would Union Pacific have to go above and beyond that standard? And would the other Class 1 roads argue that they are having merger conditions imposed on them when they are not seeking to merge? No one knows. So, that's that. But as was written and said, that is not the end. You still could see the world-famous big boy. And I have had this magazine for some time, so who knows. But now let's go to this thing. So this is a updated version of the one talked about last time. So the roads say the proposed merger will take more than 2 million trucks off the road annually within 3 years, boosting the combined system's traffic by 1.4 million intermodal carloads and 425,000 carloads. That translates into an 11% jump in volume. Nowhere will this transformation be more consequential than in the American heartland, the watershed markets within roughly 250 miles of Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis, and New Orleans. These are the central interchange gateways between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern, where freight today must change hands, where delays and costs accumulate, and where railroads lose freight to trucking. What else is good? The growth plan incorporates new manifest train services to accommodate this traffic, including 6 new train pairs on legacy and airline routes. Overall, a transcontinental Union Pacific will create 10,000 new single-line service lanes Union Pacific points out that merchandise traffic moving between 1,000 and 1,500 miles in airline service costs an average of 35% more than a comparable move involving just one railroad. This is the intermodal corridors and the full railroad, as you can see. Give you a chance to see that full detail. So in Chicago, the plan calls for idling 2 current intermodal facilities, leaving 5 major facilities in Chicagoland. Traffic at Union Pacific's Yard Center Intermodal Terminal in Dalton, Illinois, will be shifted to Norfolk Southern's 47th Street Terminal. Volume at Norfolk Southern's 63rd Street Terminal will be consolidated into Union Pacific's Global 2 facility. Union Pacific's Global 4 facility is the only one of the 5 projected to see a significant decrease. 226 lifts per day. That's pretty low. Because of train plans that would eliminate Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern interchanges at the Chicago Gateway. Union Pacific's Chicago Heights Automotive Facility will be consolidated into the Norfolk Southern facility. And Hagwich yards for manifest freight will retain their same basic functions, but car handlings will decrease. So, the merger will remove 200 Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern cars per day from the BRC's clearing yard, which is Chicago's busiest yard. BRC is the Belt Railway of Chicago short line, so it could potentially put them in major traffic for going out of business. That's not necessarily a good thing. Alright, a locomotive fleet change. If the merger gets a green signal, Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern envision that 237 locomotives initially will be added to the 2,300 currently in storage because of efficiencies created by reductions in interchange, yard touches, and trip scheduling. The combined railroad would need 1,096 additional locomotives by year 3 of the merger. And you can see here that growth right there. Alright. What is this? So alright. They assume that 40% of the system's traffic gains will be realized by the first full year after merger implementation, reaching 70% by year 2 and 100% by year 3. A projected workload increase at carload facilities is the result of both improved train schedules and blocking in the optimized plan and added traffic in the growth plan. The most dramatic expansions in annual lift capacity will occur at Inland Empire, 500,000 from 195,000 to 500,000. Sedagast, 140 to 360,000. Sharonville, 90,000 to 202,000. And Detroit Livernois, 147,000 to 277,000. Terminal upgrades included a combination of additional working tracks, more lift equipment, and more parking spaces. Very important. The railroads also will expand auto ramps in Centerville, Illinois, and Jacksonville, Florida. The Union Pacific Norfolk Southern merger will be the first judged under the STB's 2001 merger review rules, which require major combinations to enhance competition and be in the public interest. Can the first truly big merger since the 1990s clear these hurdles? Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern say that their deal checks both boxes because it will take trucks off the highway, but the other Class 1 railroads, along with some shipper groups, disagree. Well, if you're creating more parking spaces, that means more trucks. It means more trailers, it means more trailers, which means more trucks to carry the containers where they need to be. If you have more containers, you need more trucks. And if you need more trucks, that's not taking them off the road. Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern will have to address these issues more fully in the updated application they plan to file with regulators. Another key question: are the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern growth projections realistic? Hatch is skeptical of the growth time frame. He says the growth should be achievable eventually, due to signal line service. But in 3 years, that's aggressive. He says it's hard to believe Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern will be able to grow their domestic intermodal volume by 31% over 3 years, when their combined volume has been relatively flat since 2014. Alright, so that's pretty interesting. Hopefully that won't be... I think they'll pull through. They just need to submit a new application, which could take a very long time. This was in April. This was received in March, beginning of March. So, we're pretty... So, I don't know. We'll see. The next magazine should come in 5 days. 5 days or 5 days to a couple weeks. Now, turning to some other fun stuff, one of my uncles sent me this thing on replacing Amtrak fleets, which is also interesting. Amtrak is the #1 area that it's possible. So that's really the major passenger rail line in the U.S. So it's kind of large, so I'll fold it in half. Fold it in half, if I can do that. I don't know if I can. Yes, I can. Alright. Alright. This is a big... This came out of a newspaper. Which is why it's so large. Alright. Big revamp. Amtrak's aged fleet gets ready to roll. Aero, Amtrak's name for its new arrivals, is set to bring the railroad company out of the 1970s and 80s, when much of its current equipment was built. While early missteps slowed production and added costs, Aero trains will soon replace a painfully outdated fleet that lacks many modern conveniences and has become increasingly difficult to maintain, understandably. Aero trains are in high speed, with an upper limit of 125 miles per hour. They're not any faster than those they'll supplant. But the new rail cars feature sleek interiors, grab-and-go food options, and accessible designs for people with disabilities. Passengers will start to see Aero trains this summer on the Cascades route in the Pacific Northwest, followed by more than a dozen East Coast routes beginning next year, including the Northeast Regional, the Carolinian, the Pennsylvanian, and the Vermontier. Amtrak has ordered 83 Aero trains for a total of $8 billion. Wow. The largest fleet replacement since the company was founded in 1971. The trains will be built over the next several years at the Sacramento plant, which also makes light rail and intercity trains for other customers and at another factory in North Carolina. We're jumping about 50 years into the future, said Derek Meyer, a senior director at Amtrak's Aero program. It's a more open experience. It's better lit. It's newer materials. Each train includes more than 3,500 parts, manufactured by nearly 100 suppliers across 31 states. Assembling each one is like solving a supersized puzzle. The process begins in the harness room, where the train's wiring, more than 30 miles in each passenger car, is labeled, cut, and connected. It's then laid out and checked by hand to ensure each wire will be properly attached and secured in the train. Switch cabinets which house the train's electrical controls are also built here. Passenger cars made of stainless steel are built in an area called the coach weld. Automated machinery performs 30,000 spot welds per car. Alright, let's look at the next paragraph here. These capabilities... Unlike earlier models, Aero's 4,200 horsepower locomotive brings a long-anticipated feature to the rails. Unlike earlier models, it can change from diesel to electric at the flip of a switch, and some variants can even run on battery power. These capabilities will lower emissions and save time for travelers passing through Washington, D.C., an hour from here, where trains going between the electrified northeast corridor and the non-electrified network to the south must currently wait to switch locomotives. Jim Matthews, the president of the Rail Passengers Association, an advocacy group that seeks to improve American passenger rail service, said dozens of details would add up to a significantly improved traveler experience. Those features include increased legroom, larger overhead storage racks, wider aisles in some cars, restrooms with touchless controls, and ceiling-mounted screens that will announce the next stop. And all the improvements will be easier to see, thanks to bigger windows and brighter cabin lighting. If you've ridden trains in Europe, you're going to say, okay, these are pretty normal train sets. But if you haven't ridden trains in Europe, you're going to walk through these trains and be like, holy crap, this is fantastic. Perhaps no part of the Aero train generates more excitement from Amtrak officials than its seats. Amtrak and Siemens tested more than a dozen different train seats from around the world. The seat frame and the cushion are modeled after those used by Deutsche Bahn and the German Railway Company. We're getting decades of experience in terms of what passengers really find comfortable. Still, the seats might take some adjustment for Amtrak riders used to the old train's cushiony loungers. Passengers who criticize the stiff chairs on Amtrak's new Acela may be disappointed that when I sat in an Aero seat, it felt similarly firm. Power outlets, including USB and C ports, are available at every seat, no longer just at the window. Other improvements include reading lights, adjustable headrests, and larger, sturdier tray tables with breakout sections to hold various devices. A tiny screen above every seat displays each passenger's destination. Wow. Placing handwritten paper slips. People with disabilities, many of whom prefer to take Amtrak instead of dealing with the difficulties of flying, will notice a number of upgrades. Aero trains, which comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, include audio and visual announcements, accessible vestibules, I don't know why there's a big space there, to enter and exit the cafe car, adjustable tables designed for wheelchair users, and built-in motorized wheelchair lifts. Wow. All on-board restrooms are wide enough for a wheelchair to turn around. Kenneth Shiotani, a senior staff attorney at the National Disability Rights Network, toured one of the trains on Tuesday and said it would be tremendously better in virtually every way for passengers with disabilities. At the factory, workers put the finishing touches on the second Aero train. Its doors opened and closed, its screens flickered, waiting to be configured. Its locomotive hummed. It would soon head out for testing and eventually to service on the Cascade route. Around it, the plant continues to buzz. Future passengers are waiting. So, I think that's really good. Here, hold on. Let's see. Wish my, thing flipped all the way around, but it does not, so I have to turn it one way. Alright, so, let's start with the merger. My thoughts, it's very, appropriate, especially since it's very, sudden. It's very appropriate for them to reject it for the reasons listed. I honestly think it'll go through, but we'll see. So, I think if there's a way to merge without putting trucks off the road, without putting short lines out of business, it would be really good, because if you can make everyone happy, that's the best thing. As for the seats, there's no doubt that'll be better for everyone. Amtrak definitely needed those repairs now, knowing that these cars are, what is it, 75? Yeah. 50 to 75 years old. It's a long time for a car. So, yeah, look out for those. Whenever you're on your next trip. I don't know when this newspaper was published. It was like a month ago, so should be seeing these new cars in a bit. I'll definitely keep updated on the merger, and yeah, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching this.